In the sun-drenched town of Decatur, Alabama, summer began like any other, with the hum of cicadas and the sweet scent of blooming magnolias wafting through the air. Residents bustled about their daily routines, unaware that beneath the surface of this picturesque landscape, a sinister tale was unfolding. It was a morning like no other when the townsfolk received the shocking news. A beloved mother, Hannah Mann, was rushed to the local hospital, fighting for her life, barely breathing and shrouded in a mystery that left medical staff puzzled and concerned. Hannah, a devoted mother of two, had woven her world around her children, each day meticulously planned to the rhythm of their needs. Mornings were a flurry of breakfast preparations and daycare drop-offs, while afternoons melted into cooking and laundry, all punctuated by the joyous laughter of her little ones. Yet, behind this facade of domestic bliss lay an unsettling truth. Hannah had become increasingly isolated, her vibrant connections to friends and family slowly severed by her husband, Brian, a local chiropractor known for his meticulous professionalism and dedication. At first glance, their life appeared idyllic, a tidy home, a well-kept yard, and the laughter of children echoing in the evenings. But as the days turned to months, it became evident that Brian's control had tightened around Hannah like a vice. Social gatherings were often postponed, phone calls went unanswered, and the vibrant woman who once thrived in community now seemed a mere specter of her former self. Friends whispered about how Brian insisted on managing every aspect of their life, subtly dismissing Hannah's desires for independence and interaction. As summer progressed, a new routine emerged, one that would alter the course of their lives forever. One day, Brian, leveraging his position as a health professional, suggested a daily regimen of vitamins designed to bolster Hannah's health. "It's essential for you, especially with the kids to care for," he reassured her, his voice smooth and persuasive. Trusting his expertise, Hannah embraced this new routine, unknowingly stepping into a dark spiral. Days turned into weeks, and the symptoms began to creep in, subtle yet alarming. Hannah felt a wave of fatigue wash over her, dizziness clinging to her like a shadow. She attributed it to the relentless demands of motherhood, but as the summer sun sank lower in the sky, her condition deteriorated. Her once vibrant spirit waned, and her body began to betray her, clothes hanging loosely as she unwittingly slipped into a state of frailty. Brian always remained calm, presenting a facade of control and care. To the outside world, he was the model husband, balancing work and family life with effortless grace. Yet behind closed doors, Hannah felt the weight of despair crushing her, her autonomy stripped away by the very person she had trusted the most. Each night, as Brian handed her the soothing gummies and powdered mixes to dissolve in water, he assured her, "Just a little longer. Soon, you'll feel better than ever." But with each dose, Hannah felt weaker, her body responding to a hidden poison rather than a remedy. The conflict reached its peak when that fateful morning arrived. Hannah lay in the hospital bed, her body fragile and her spirit nearly extinguished. The news of her condition rippled through Decatur like wildfire, igniting fervor and fear among the townsfolk. How could this happen? What dark force was at play? In the sterile hospital room, as fluorescent lights flickered overhead, the truth began to unravel. Medical professionals, piecing together the puzzle, started to suspect foul play. Investigations were launched, and whispers of a once happy home turned into a battleground of betrayal and deceit. As Hannah slowly regained consciousness, surrounded by a team of doctors and the concerned faces of friends and family, the realization dawned upon her. She had been living in a carefully constructed prison. With the courage that had been stifled for too long, Hannah found her voice. No longer the passive figure in her own life, she began to recount the chilling details of her marriage, revealing the manipulative tactics Brian had employed. The town that had once celebrated the man's now grappled with the horror of betrayal. As the story flooded out, Decatur joined together in support of Hannah, rallying around her as she began to reclaim her life. With newfound strength, she sought therapy, rebuilt her connections, and slowly emerged from the shadows of her husband's manipulation. In the months that followed, the community enveloped her in warmth, helping to mend the wounds left by years of control. With determination, she transformed her narrative from one of despair to resilience, inspiring others to break free from their own chains. The journey was arduous, but as the seasons changed and the sun rose higher in the sky, Hannah stood tall, a testament to the power of reclaiming one's truth. The town of Dakar would never forget the chilling tale of the Mann household, a story that began in silence, but ignited a flame of courage and hope for all trapped in the shadows. In the warmth of late summer 2021, Hannah stood in her kitchen, the sunlight filtering through the window, casting a soft glow on her hands as she chopped vegetables. Despite the vibrant colors of the produce, there was a growing darkness within her. She had been feeling off for some time, a whisper of discontent in her body that she couldn't quite articulate. Her partner, Brian, had assured her that it was merely an adjustment to the new nutritional regimen he had designed for her. His voice was calm and confident, infused with the authority of his medical background. "It's normal to feel a bit strange at first," he said, his eyes steady on hers, "but soon you'll feel stronger than ever." Hannah wanted to believe him. The symptoms were subtle, a gradual decline rather than a sudden crash. On some days, she felt fleeting improvements, sparks of energy that filled her with false hope. Yet, as the months slid by like the autumn leaves outside, her energy waned, and the scale tipped lower, a stubborn reminder of her fragility. By late fall, the once gentle whispers of her body had turned into loud cries for help. Nausea curled in her stomach, making each meal a formidable challenge. Simple tasks became Herculean feats. Standing at the kitchen counter left her breathless. Nighttime brought muscle cramps that would jolt her from sleep, leaving her staring into the darkness, feeling both lost and frightened. With each passing day, the gap between the woman she used to be and the shadow of herself that she had become widened. Brian, however, remained steadfast in his belief that she would pull through this unscathed. "Just rest more, stay hydrated, and do those stretches I showed you," he would say, his tone laced with encouragement, masking the tightening grip he had over her life. He discouraged her from seeking medical help, framing her symptoms as the predictable fallout of parenting stress and seasonal fatigue. And so, she found herself ensnared in a cycle of dependency, her autonomy slipping away like grains of sand. As December approached, Hannah's reality became increasingly bleak. Her clothes hung off her frame like forgotten memories, her face a canvas of exhaustion. She struggled to lift her children, often needing to pause and catch her breath. The reflections in the mirror no longer resembled the woman she knew, and a growing sense of despair bubbled beneath her surface. Still, she clung to Brian's assurances like a lifeboat in a storm. But when the critical moment came, it wasn't Hannah who sought help. It was her mother, a relentless force of love who could no longer ignore the evident decline. On a dreary winter morning, her mother arrived, a look of concern etched on her face as she helped Hannah into warm clothes. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Hannah felt detached, her mind swimming through a haze of abdominal pain and fatigue. Upon arrival at the University of Alabama Hospital, her mother wasted no time relaying the dire state of her daughter's health to the staff. The doctors wasted no time either, their faces growing serious as they took her vitals. With each test, the gravity of Hannah's condition unfolded like a dark flower. Her weight was perilously low, her pulse weak and unsteady. The probing inquiries into her health unearthed a shocking revelation. Her blood lead levels were alarmingly high, an indication of a slow, insidious poisoning. As the doctors worked tirelessly to uncover the root of her suffering, Hannah felt herself slipping further away from reality. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air, mingling with the metallic taste of fear on her tongue. As she was moved to critical care, the weight of her previous denial crashed over her like a tidal wave. No longer could she deny the whispers of her own body, nor the implications of the life she had unwittingly led. In that sterile room, amidst the beeping machines and worried glances, Hannah faced the reality of her situation. The battle was not merely against her illness, but against the silence that had wrapped around her, suffocating her spirit. As she lay in the hospital bed, a flicker of determination ignited within her. This was her moment to reclaim her life, to break free from the chains of denial and find her strength anew. And with the unwavering support of her mother, she began the arduous path toward recovery, ready to confront the shadows of her past and embrace the light of her future. In the quiet town of Morgan County, an ominous shadow loomed over the Mann family. For years, Hannah, a bright-eyed girl with dreams of becoming a veterinarian, began to suffer from inexplicable ailments. Laughter echoed through their modest home, yet beneath the surface, a sinister threat was slowly poisoning her. It was in the darkest moments of her struggle that her mother, Maria, felt a deep unease, a mother's instinct ignited by the gradual but relentless decline of her daughter's health. The day Hannah was rushed to the hospital marked a turning point. As the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, the sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air. Doctors, with their furrowed brows and urgent whispers, decided to induce a medical coma to shield her fragile body from the grips of lead poisoning. Maria, heart pounding and eyes brimming with tears, clung to hope as she watched the medical team work tirelessly on her child. Each beep of the monitor was a reminder of their fight against time. Weeks turned into a haze of medical jargon and sterile wards. The rhythmic sound of the ventilator became a haunting lullaby for Maria as she paced the hospital corridor, her mind racing with thoughts of what could have caused this catastrophe. The doctors initiated chelation therapy, administering specific medications to bind the lead and flush it from Hannah's system. The slow, a greatly arduous process, required constant monitoring, and with each passing day, the reality of their precarious situation sunk deeper. Hannah had been hospitalized for nearly 2 months when the doctors finally stabilized her breathing and regulated her vitals. Yet the damage was evident. They gently broke the news to Maria. Full recovery was unlikely. Each word felt like a dagger, piercing through her heart. The prolonged exposure to such a toxic metal had left its mark, and the thought that a single delay could have resulted in tragedy haunted her. In the midst of this turmoil, investigators were dispatched to unravel the mystery of how a young girl had come to ingest such a dangerous substance. They scoured the Mann household in search of environmental lead, collecting water samples and examining the ancient plumbing. The kitchen, once a sanctuary of warmth and nourishment, transformed into a battleground against an invisible enemy. Brian, Hannah's father, presented himself as cooperative, yet his demeanor raised suspicion among the investigators. They noted his insistence on the vitamins Hannah had been taking, ones he had sourced from his clinic. As their inquiry deepened, evidence began to surface, casting doubt on his claims. Investigators dismissed the theory of fast food exposure. It was clear that the source was far more insidious. As they tested the drinking water and scrutinized pantry items, a chilling realization dawned upon them. The origin of the lead remained elusive. Days turned into a blur of interviews and examinations. Investigators collected dust samples and even swabs from the kitchen sink, focusing intently on the supplements Hannah had consumed. Each detail pieced together a portrait of Hannah's daily life, revealing that her father had often encouraged her to take her vitamins at night, always with water he had placed by her bedside. These revelations ignited a theory of intentional exposure, igniting a flame of suspicion around Brian. With every passing moment, the walls of their home became a stage for an unraveling drama. Brian's claims of self-diagnosis using X-ray equipment were met with incredulity from medical staff. The very act of self-examination raised red flags, twisting the narrative into one of potential malevolence. The investigators turned their attention to him, meticulously verifying his claims and probing for any access he might have had to lead outside their household. As the weight of the investigation bore down on him, Brian's facade began to crack. The truth dripped slowly into the light, revealing a labyrinth of deception. Maria, caught in the tumult of fear and disbelief, struggled to protect her children from the unfolding horror. The emotional toll was immense. She was left grappling with the duality of her love for her husband and the instinct to shield her children from harm. In the end, as Hannah fought through the darkness of her medical ordeal, a battle raged within the walls of their home, a fight for truth and resolution. Maria's unwavering love for her daughter provided a beacon of hope as they navigated the treacherous waters of recovery and revelation. And with each step forward, the strength of a mother's love stood resilient, a force that would not be easily extinguished, echoing through the halls of their lives long after the storm had passed. In the sterile, white halls of Maplewood Hospital, Brian's heart raced, pounding against his ribcage like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The fluorescent lights flickered above him, casting sharp shadows that danced across the floor, mirroring the turmoil roiling within him. He had been summoned for a medical evaluation, a mere formality, or so he thought, until he heard the word lead whispered among the medical staff, a sound that sent chills skittering down his spine. As the doctors began their tests, Brian's fingers fidgeted with the fabric of his shirt, the rough texture grounding him momentarily. He could feel their eyes on him, assessing him, scrutinizing him. He had always prided himself on his composure, but today, anxiety clawed at him, urging him to flee. The results came back, and an unsettling truth emerged. Lead was in his system, but only in trace amounts. The doctors assured him it was too low to cause symptoms, too recent to imply long-term accumulation. But then there were Hannah's results. They painted a stark, grim picture of prolonged exposure, evidence that built a wall between them, a wall that Brian had no way to scale. The experts spoke in hushed tones, concluding that his own lead exposure was likely a ruse, an attempt to share in Hannah's suffering, to cloak himself in the guise of a concerned spouse. The timeline didn't match, and doubt began to seep into the cracks of their fragile narrative. As interviews with acquaintances unfolded, a chilling portrait emerged. During Hannah's struggle with illness, Brian had shown no signs of the fatigue or malaise that would have aligned with lead poisoning. He was the picture of health, his daily life untouched by the turmoil that gripped his wife. The investigators, relentless in their pursuit, found their suspicions deepening, weaving a narrative that hinted at something far darker. Then, in the summer of 2022, a phone call came that would alter the course of their investigation. A contractor who had worked with Brian the previous year stepped forward, his voice trembling with the weight of his revelation. He recounted the installation of an X-ray room at Brian's clinic, the lead sheets used for shielding, and the leftover materials that Brian had insisted be left behind. At the time, it seemed a trivial request, but now it bore a grave significance as the contractor connected the dots between his work and Hannah's illness. August 2021 emerged as a pivotal moment, the month when Hannah's health began to plummet. Just after the renovations were completed, she had started to suffer. Brian had gained access to lead, a source of poison that could explain the invisible affliction plaguing his wife. The contractor's testimony became a turning point, revealing the chilling possibility of deliberate exposure. As the investigation deepened, another alarming detail surfaced. Hannah's life insurance policies, a staggering total of $1.3 million, with Brian as both the policyholder and sole beneficiary. The calculated spread across various providers obscured the full scope of Brian's potential gain, and the timing echoed with sinister implications. Policies taken out when Hannah was healthy morphed into a dark shade of premeditation as Brian sought to enhance the coverage during her decline. Hannah's own voice, once vibrant and full of life, had become a haunting echo in the backdrop of this tragedy. Brian had pressured her, urging her to wear weighted bands during medical weigh-ins, a desperate attempt to mask her deteriorating health and maintain the facade of stability that would benefit their insurance claims. In a web of deceit, spun by desperation and greed, the investigators stood resolute, piecing together a narrative that spoke of malice hidden beneath a veneer of love. The resolution of this case loomed like a storm on the horizon, each fragment of evidence leading them closer to the truth. A truth that would not only expose Brian's treachery, but would also seek justice for Hannah, a woman who had suffered silently while her husband played the part of the devoted caretaker. As the final pieces fell into place, the air thickened with the promise of revelation, leaving a lingering question. Would justice prevail, or would the darkness of betrayal swallow it whole? In the sterile confines of the consultation room, a tension hummed in the air, palpable as the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over Brian's furrowed brow. He sat rigidly in his chair, his eyes darting between the medical staff and the clutter of papers strewn across the table. The details of Hannah's condition seemed to blur into the background, overshadowed by his obsessive fixation on policy limits and insurance stipulations. To the medical team, Brian was a puzzle, a man whose priorities appeared skewed. He consistently diverted conversations toward technicalities, drawing a veil over the gravity of his wife's diagnosis. Hannah, a woman who once radiated warmth and laughter, now languished under the weight of her illness. In her eyes, a flicker of defiance and determination remained, though dulled by the incessant shadows of doubt and despair. Her husband, the man she loved, had become a stranger, his focus not on her welfare, but on the financial lifelines that intertwined their fates. Investigators, armed with Hannah's insurance forms, were drawn into a labyrinth of intrigue. Questions began to surface. Who had initiated the applications? Who stood to gain the most from potential payouts? And how could the medical records be manipulated to fit the requirements of the policies? With every layer peeled back, suspicions mounted like storm clouds gathering in the distance. A glaring discrepancy emerged in their insurance portfolio. Brian, the primary earner, held a modest policy, while Hannah, whose contributions were less substantial, was insured for an amount that raised eyebrows. This imbalance was not merely a statistical anomaly. It painted a stark picture of potential financial misconduct. If Hannah were to die, the financial windfall for Brian would be considerable, igniting a firestorm of speculation around his motives. As the courtroom drama unfolded, the stakes soared. The prosecution crafted a narrative, seamlessly threading the evidence together, suggesting that Brian had deliberately poisoned Hannah with lead to secure an insurance payout. An unyielding timeline emerged, punctuated by medical facts and financial records that painted a damning portrait of calculated malevolence. The defense, however, fought back with equal fervor. They seized on procedural flaws, questioning the integrity of sample collection and the legitimacy of the evidence presented. Was there definitive proof linking Brian to Hannah's poisoning? Or was it merely a web of circumstantial evidence that could be easily unraveled? They introduced alternative theories, accidental contamination lurking in the shadows of their home, eroding the prosecution's carefully constructed narrative. Court proceedings dragged on, a testament to the emotional toll inflicted upon those involved. As the months rolled into June 2025, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. Every word spoken, every piece of evidence scrutinized, drew the jury deeper into the labyrinthine complexity of the case. Finally, after hours of deliberation, the verdict rang out, guilty of attempted murder. The air crackled with disbelief, and Brian's face drained of color. Chilling silence enveloping the courtroom. In the immediate wake of the verdict, the judge laid bare the potential consequences. Brian faced the specter of life imprisonment, a harrowing fate that loomed over him like a guillotine. His defense clung to the vestiges of hope, citing his clean record and the fact that Hannah had survived. Yet the prosecution painted a bleak picture of a man ensnared by greed, intent on capitalizing on his wife's suffering. As the sentencing hearing approached in August 2025, the courtroom became a battleground of contrasting narratives. The prosecution's argument echoed the chilling reality of Brian's actions, a calculated, multi-stage process that dismantled the very fabric of their family. Yet the defense urged the judge to consider the man before him, a respected member of the community whose past was marred by the shadows of his present. The judge, weighing the evidence, understood the gravity of the situation. The courtroom held its breath as the judge delivered the sentence, a life changed irrevocably, echoing the life that had been lost. As Brian was led away in handcuffs, a heavy silence fell, leaving Hannah to navigate her own path of recovery, forever altered by the chaos that had erupted in their lives. It was a story not just of crime and punishment, but of love twisted into betrayal. A life once filled with promise, now unraveling amidst the stark reality of betrayal and survival. In the dimly lit courtroom, the air was thick with tension, a palpable weight that pressed down on all who gathered. The judge's voice rang out, steady and resolute, declaring Brian's crime as one of profound and prolonged harm. Hannah Mann, once vibrant and full of life, now sat quietly in her wheelchair, the echoes of her past laughter replaced by a haunting silence. Her eyes, once bright with dreams, now held the shadows of irreversible pain and loss. As the sentencing unfolded, the flickering fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glow on her weary face. Brian, with his unkempt hair and a vacant stare, seemed worlds away from the man he once was, a trusted physician whose hands had once healed. Now those same hands had wrought havoc, leading to Hannah's affliction and the disintegration of her family. The judge pronounced a sentence of 25 years in state prison, a cold verdict that offered no solace to Hannah, who would carry the scars of this tragedy for life. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, the energy fluctuating between disbelief and sympathy. Hannah's heart ached as she recalled the innocent days before the diagnosis, when she could chase after her children in the park, their laughter like music filling the air. Now, her son and daughter were with relatives, their childhoods tainted by the fallout of their mother's suffering. Media outlets had flocked to this story like vultures, their cameras capturing every tear. Every tremor of Hannah's fragile resolve. Time moved swiftly yet painfully slow, as the reality of her new existence settled in. Doctors had told her about the irreversible effects of lead poisoning, neurological impairments, chronic pain, the gnawing fatigue that buried her spirit under layers of despair. Each morning was a battle, and every movement a reminder of what was lost. Yet, amid the darkness, a flicker of hope remained. Hannah clung to her children, envisioning a future where they could heal together. She publicly thanked the medical staff and investigators, their relentless commitment a lifeline during her most desperate moments. "Without your efforts, I might not have survived," she said, her voice steady, but her heart trembling with gratitude. Though the future loomed uncertain, her focus was singular: healing. She knew she could not change the past, nor could she erase the damage done, but she could advocate for her children and others affected by Brian's negligence. In the aftermath of the trial, as the clinic was shuttered and the building sold, the world outside began to shift. Insurance companies tightened their policies, implementing rigorous checks that would shape the medical landscape henceforth. The case had set a precedent, igniting discussions about accountability and the ethical responsibilities of medical professionals. Hannah's journey was far from over. Each day was a mosaic of small victories and overwhelming challenges. Yet she faced them all with a fierce determination. As she wheeled herself through the park, the laughter of children rang in her ears, a bittersweet reminder of what once was and what could still be. Her resilience became a beacon of strength, not just for herself, but for all who had endured the fallout of Brian's actions. With unwavering resolve, she continued to move forward, one day at a time, embracing the love of her children and the hope of a brighter tomorrow.